there's some really remarkable research that's been done lately that brings to the fore things that I think a lot of us, not just a lot of us. I don't mean to put myself in any elite class. I think in general Americans have had this sense for at least a decade, and probably more like 2 or 3, that the rich were getting richer, the poor were getting poorer, but perhaps more importantly, the policies that the rich wanted were getting done, and the policies that average working people wanted were getting ignored. And Dr. Martin Gilens, is it Gilens, sir?
Gilens.
Gilens. My apologies. Dr. Martin Gilens, professor of politics at Princeton University, co-author of the book with Professor Benjamin Page of Northwestern University of the new study, Testing Theories of American Politics, Elites, Interest Groups, and Average Citizens. I found this absolutely fascinating. Dr. Gilens, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us. Can you, and the website is scholar.princeton.edu and Twitter @Princeton. If you can give us a summary, basically, of, well, actually, even before we get into what your research found, why do this research?
Well, as you just mentioned, economic inequality has been growing in this country for a number of decades now. And I think more and more people were concerned that a vicious cycle was developing where the people with the money have the power to shape political institutions in ways that further entrench their power, and that the economic inequality would be accompanied by growing political inequality. So we started to collect some data to see whether there was evidence of that and just how unequal political influence is in this country.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of data did you collect?
We looked at about 25 years' worth of policy proposals. So this is all federal government policymaking, and across a very wide range of policies, anything from domestic issues, foreign policies, economic, social, whatever we could get our hands on. Almost 2,000 different proposed changes to federal government policy between 1981 and 2002. And for each of those proposed changes, we collected data on what ordinary citizens wanted, what percentage of them supported the proposed change, what economic elites wanted, and what interest groups wanted. And by having information on all of those actors at the same time, we were able to assess the relative importance, the relative influence of each of them in determining what, in fact, the government actually did.
Mm-hmm. If we could just clarify some terms. By economic elites, how much do you have to make to be an economic elite?
Well, so we view economic elites as not just a sort of handful of billionaires, but of thousands of people who have the resources to make substantial monetary contributions to candidates, to parties, to advocacy organizations, and so on.
So this would be the top 1%, roughly?
Well, in our analysis, we look at people at the 90th income percentile, but we view those individuals as a proxy for still wealthier people, something like the top 1%, though it's hard to say. And I think it's important to point out that there's not any sort of set line where, above this amount you have influence and below that amount you don't have influence.
Right.
It's more a matter of among people who have an interest in shaping what the government does, the more money they have, the more influence they have.
Okay. And then to define the term special interest groups.
Interest groups, there's thousands of groups in Washington that lobby the government on basically anything that the government does. Sure. And we couldn't look at thousands of them, but we put together a list of a few dozen of the most powerful interest groups in Washington based on interviews with sort of Washington insiders, with congressional staff and with lobbyists and so on. And that list, in other work, has been shown to correspond quite closely to sort of more elaborate efforts to measure the range of interest groups that are engaged on a particular issue.
Okay.
So for us, it was everything from automobile manufacturers or defense industries to the AARP or the AFL-CIO. Most of them were business groups, as most interest organizations in Washington are, but they also included what we call mass-oriented or mass-based interest groups like unions or the AARP and so on.
What about conservation groups, Greenpeace kind of thing, the religious groups? They have a significant presence here in Washington, D.C., particularly the anti-abortion religious groups, the anti-gay religious groups, whatnot.
Yeah, some of those groups made it onto our list, and some didn't. And you're right about the abortion groups. Those are included. Also, groups like the NRA. But environmental groups were not perceived by Washington insiders as being among the most influential.
They just don't have enough money to have influence. Is that the deal?
Yes, I think that's the bottom line.
That's a sad commentary on our times. So we're talking with Dr. Martin Gilens, professor of politics at Princeton University and co-author of this brilliant new study, Testing Theories of American Politics. So you looked at the preferences of the economic elites, the top 90th percentile and above income group, of special interest groups and of average citizens with regard to each one of these three groups with regard to over roughly 2,000 individual policy prescriptions, attempted legislation over the past 20 some odd, almost 30 years.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, to recap. And what did you find?
Well, we found that economic elites and interest groups have a substantial influence over government policymaking, but that ordinary citizens have essentially none. The image that I think many people still cling to of America as a place where average, middle-class individuals play some important role in determining what their government does just is not the case.
Wow, that's very disheartening. John Paul Stevens, in his dissent in Citizens United, wrote that if this decision stood, that it would cause people to give up on the political process, become cynical, and stop even voting, much less participating in politics. Are we there yet?
Well, I think there's certainly a reason for cynicism and maybe even despair. Nonetheless, there are ways forward, and even in light of recent Supreme Court decisions, cutting down various elements of campaign finance reform, there are proposals which skirt those concerns, those restrictions, and get around the issues of First Amendment rights. So, for example, New York City has a campaign finance law where small donations get matched with public funds on a 6-to-1 basis. So small donations are worth 7 times the amount to a candidate. And that has the effect of allowing, small donors to play a much larger role and a much broader range of individuals to have a voice, not only in who wins elections, but in who is a viable candidate to begin with.
And Anthony Scalia has not tried to strike this down.
This has survived First Amendment challenges.
Yeah. Remarkable.
And in fact, there's proposals at the national level that mirror that kind of approach.
Hang on just a second, sir. We're talking with Dr. Martin Gilens, Professor of Politics at Princeton University.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Gilens, Professor Gilens. I'm sorry. I keep mispronouncing. Dr. Martin Gilens. We'll be right back with more. Welcome back, Dr. Gilens. You still with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so when you your study didn't just drop with a thud into academia like so many do. It made its way across the blogosphere pretty rapidly and got a lot of attention.
Yeah, we were pretty amazed, I have to say.
Well, tell me about how. What kind of response have you had to it, and has that response come from quarters that give you optimism?
Well, it's a good question. I guess the first thing I'd say is that it is heartening to see that there is so much interest, so much concern on a question which, we believe is at the core of the nature of our society, and our government. We've sort of tapped into the zeitgeist, if you will, here, and that does give me some encouragement. There is a sense of if not despair, or at least resignation. And I think a lot of the response that we've gotten is, you guys maybe have pointed out this problem or, put into kind of statistical, scientific terms what we suspected, but what we really need are solutions. And, honestly, those are much harder to come by. I do think campaign finance reform is one important one. We could talk about that a little bit more.
Sure.
And I don't want to say that citizens play no role. So what we found in our work and what we've seen historically is that when disadvantaged or underrepresented or less powerful groups are able to achieve what they want, it's because they have allies. In this case, in our work, allies among either economic elites or interest groups. And we found a variety of examples where that was how policies that are important to the middle class got passed.
How is this different from or similar to the end of the 19th century when we had the horrible crash of 1898, I think it was, and arguably the end of the Gilded Age leading to the progressive and populist revolution over the next couple of decades?
I'm not a historian, and so I wouldn't want to venture, too much. But it does seem as if there are many parallels to that period.
This is. I don't know if you read Plutocrats by. What's her name? She was the editor of the Financial Times for years and years. Krista Freeland. Krista Freeland, right? I don't want to put words in her mouth or in her book. I was very impressed by her book, but it drew some interesting parallels between that time and this. Are we in a new Gilded Age?
Well, in terms of economic inequality, there's no question about it. And a portion of the country's wealth that's held by the top tenth or hundredth of 1%, is just so great. It's greater now than it was at any time since the 1920s. Income inequality has been growing for decades now. And I think, we're even seeing culturally the reflections of that as we become a more divided society. Gated communities and, private air travel and so on.
Right.
That the very rich live in a world that's, they're not even living in the same world as ordinary Americans.
Yeah, they don't have to deal with the TSA.
Exactly.
Dr. Martin Gilens is with us. He's professor of politics at Princeton University. We'll be right back. It's 20 minutes past the hour. Mother's Day is coming up soon, and we are giving away proflowers.com gift certificates to some of our callers. There are more details at proflowers.com for Mother's Day gift ideas. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, 20 minutes past the hour. Dr. Martin Gilens is with us, professor of politics at Princeton University, co-author with Professor Benjamin Page of Northwestern University of a new study titled Testing Theories of American Politics, Elites, Interest Groups, and Average Citizens. And just to recap, essentially what you found is that the average citizen in the United States today has virtually no say in the creation or execution of public policy and in getting laws passed that benefit them, but that special interest groups, well-funded special interest groups, and well-funded individuals, people above the 90th percentile of income, or was it income or wealth?
Income.
Okay, of income. Have a consequential impact on the outcome of public policy. First question, you looked back almost 30 years. The Reagan Revolution is 33 years old. We've been in this era for 33 years now of what George Herbert Walker Bush referred to as voodoo economics, a very different economic perspective. I think Barack Obama was right when he said that Reagan genuinely was a revolutionary. And we kind of turned away from the Keynesian policies that animated the New Deal. Do you think that things were different prior to the 1980s?
Well, I mean, I think there is some evidence in our data that the responsiveness of government policymakers to the well-to-do has increased over the last few decades. But there's no evidence that there ever really was a time when middle-class Americans had a substantial voice in what government does. I mean, just look historically, right? Our founders thought that only property-owning white males were fit to be involved in politics.
Yeah.
And
or at least some of our founders did. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a new thing, political inequality. But the formal political equality that has expanded over the centuries, the right to vote, for example, our work shows has not been accompanied by an actual broadening of influence over what the government does.
Right. So you mentioned that you don't. I believe that you don't. You didn't. One of the critiques was where are the policy prescriptions? You're not overt in them because you're doing an analytic test here. But what do you draw from this? What should we do?
Well, we should try to find ways to lessen the importance of big donations in politics. The interest groups that lobby and support candidates and the wealthy individuals that we've seen sort of more and more becoming involved in the wake of Citizens United. People who can spend millions of dollars, $100 million to promote their favorite candidate. I mean, this is a perversion of the political system. And the Supreme Court has been moving us in the wrong direction, in my view, in terms of campaign finance laws. But there's things we can do about it. There's ways around it. And I was mentioning the system that New York City has. The similar system has been proposed, for example, by John Sarbanes, to create a sort of matching fund system at the federal level. Larry Lessig at Harvard Law School has even gone a step further and suggested what he calls democracy vouchers, where citizens would have like a coupon or a voucher that they could use at no cost to themselves to direct money from the public treasury to the candidate of their choice. And the idea here is that you're empowering the middle class, you're empowering the less well-off to participate in a system that listens at least as much to money as to votes.
Right. My favorite solution to this is the MoveToAmend.org group, who are suggesting, the Supreme Court really, since Buckley and then First National Bank versus Bellotti and then ultimately Citizens United, the Supreme Court just in the last 50 years has discovered in the First Amendment money, that money is somehow protected by the First Amendment. And so we could pass a constitutional amendment saying that we're going to go back to the old notion that money was merely a behavior, use of money was a behavior rather than was speech, and that money is not speech. Just explicitly say it, that money is not speech. And while we're at it, we could also say that the 14th Amendment, that Abe Lincoln didn't fight the Civil War to free the corporations. The corporations are not afforded equal protection under the law by the 14th Amendment. Would that not accomplish, or at least set the table to accomplish, pretty much everything that you're talking about?
Well, I mean, I think those would be very positive changes, and I'm certainly willing to sign on to that petition.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Constitution is by design a very difficult thing to amend, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be trying.
Yeah. Well, in '71, it took.
It's worth pursuing a variety of avenues.
Yeah, I mean, we had enough people upset about the fact that they, 18-year-olds were being shipped off to Vietnam, but they weren't old enough to vote in 1971, that it took 3 months and 8 days to amend the Constitution with the 26th Amendment to lower the voting age. So maybe if we could get enough people upset,
absolutely,
or educated. Where are you going? We have just a minute left. Where are you going with this? Are you doing more research on this? Are you taking this beyond this point?
Well, yeah. So I've actually written an entire book that goes beyond what's in the paper and involves some more recent data as well as some older data from the 1960s. That's recently out in paperback. It's called Affluence and Influence. And that's a Princeton University Press book.
I wish I had known when we started. I would have been plugging it all through this talk. Affluence and Influence, and it's available right now in paperback.
That's right.
At your favorite bookseller, Affluence and Influence by Dr. Martin Gilens, Gilens. And, in fact, actually, I have a note here about this. Thank you so much for dropping by today, sir.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Nice talking to you.
It's very, very good talking. We will be back